Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host, Bill DeFilippo, joined tonight by my co-host, Matt Filipovitz. Matt, what's going on?
Bill, I checked my mail today, and in there
Mhm.
was a package from not a sponsor, but I will always plug them. My favorite store downtown, Lions Pride. Bill, as you may well know, I am the February 2019 Lions Pride Employee of the Month,
Mm.
and I received my first piece of Penn State Adidas merch. I got a nice polo, so I'm very excited about that. Bill, we didn't have a podcast last week, and we're late this week. Do you want to tell the listeners why that is?
Yeah, very last second, I got a ticket to go to the USA's game against Bosnia in
And
Santa
Herzegovina,
Clara and
of course.
Bosnia and Herzegovina. Yes, shout out to the Balkan states. And as you can guess, getting last second flights from the Great Lakes to San Jose takes up a lot of time. And then being in San Jose takes up a lot of time. So do apologize for taking a week off and not having anything for you last week, but it's okay because I can go on a mini rant about In-N-Out now. That Matt has never actually been to In-N-Out, which I did not know before, Matt. I figured you were well traveled enough that you would have come across an In-N-Out at some point.
I've only been to California twice, Bill. Once to move my sister in when she got a job out there in, I want to say, June of 2020. And there was a lot going on in June of 2020, and In-N-Out wasn't top of mind for me. And then I went for work a couple years back. Only times I've been to California.
Mm. California itself is very like you get to California and you understand why it's like this idyllic place that everybody wants to live with perfect weather all the time. But oh my God, In-N-Out, we've lost the plot if that is like what people envision a burger shop should be. Like for what you pay, you get a really good burger and very bad fries. If you are
Tough.
just the fries at In-N-Out are so goddamn bad. I got the best ones that I had ever gotten on this past trip, and they were still not very good. The burger itself is a really rock solid cheeseburger. I think anyone who would take In-N-Out over Shake Shack, over Five Guys,
Never been to either of those as well.
Five Guys makes sense because I know about your nut
Yep.
allergies.
Yep. So no Five Guys for me. Yep.
Does Shake Shack use peanut oil? As far as you know, or you just never been to one?
Never been. There was one actually right by my apartment when I lived up by Wrigley Field a couple years back, and I just never wandered over there.
Yeah, I've been to
Culver's many times.
I've been to a Shake Shack in Chicago, so that's surprising. Culver's, unbelievable.
The best.
Culver's.
Culver's is so good, dude.
Culver's has a little bit of everything, and it does all those things well. And like I never had that until I moved out to Ohio. But if you are going by like the slightly nicer chain burger places, Culver's is just a goddamn delight. The cool thing about In-N-Out, I will say, is that we went after Mexico stunned Ecuador, and Southern California, or California in general, is just a very large Mexican population. So like me and my one friend who I went with were like the only people in there who did not have Mexico jerseys on. And just like the energy in the place was great. Unfortunately, that didn't save the food, but the energy of the place was really, really great. So yeah, that is why we did not have a podcast last week, because I was too busy thinking about. I actually wasn't going to mention In-N-Out on this podcast until Matt asked me about it, and I was like, "Yeah, you know what? I think we can kill 5 minutes here." Matt,
it's also a great segue because we were talking about offensive line today, which is
we're talking about beef.
Yep, we're talking about beef. Sorry, what were we gonna say?
I was gonna say, what is your chain burger place of choice?
Oh, Wendy's, 1,000%.
Really?
Love
okay.
Wendy's. Yep.
I love Wendy's.
Yes. Love Wendy's. There was a Wendy's. There's the Wendy's. Oh my God. Was it on Atherton? And after me and my buddies in college would play basketball at Rec Hall, we would drive to the Wendy's. And now I feel like if I ate Wendy's like I did back then, after running around for 2 hours hooping, I think it would kill me. So I haven't been to Wendy's in a while. Yeah. I think the last time I was at Wendy's was driving back from the Big Ten championship game 2 years ago, or I guess last year it would have been 2 years ago.
Hmm.
I think that was the last time I went to Wendy's.
Where is the nearest Wendy's to you now where you are?
Oh, I could walk there if I really wanted to. I'd have to cross a highway, but I could. There's a Wendy's extremely close to me. That's true. But Bill, there is. I'm so sorry. We're starting this off with just food talk.
No.
Right down the road, Bill. Right down the road from me, there is a little chicken shack. I would bet it's called Red Light Chicken, and all they do are a fried chicken sandwich. You can get it either hot or regular, fries, and a shake. And that's the only thing they do, and it is fantastic. So that is like my preferred in a pinch meal of choice. It is one of my absolute favorites. It's like truly a little shack that I walk to and walk home from in like under 4 minutes. It's electric.
When you said Chicken Shack, I was like, I thought you meant like the chicken place that Shaquille O'Neal has.
Nice.
So that is delicious. Shack's Big Chicken. Oh goodness gracious!
Never been.
There were rumors of one opening up here, but whatever. Anyway, offensive line. Penn State's offensive line gone through a bit of an overhaul with the coaching change, but it was also a unit that was going to have a unit that was going to have a lot of overhaul after last season. Regardless, I mean, Drew Shelton moving on to the NFL, Vega Ioane moving on to the NFL, Nick Dawkins moving on to the NFL, Nolan Rucci moving on to the NFL. Coming into last season, Matt, we were expecting Penn State to have to rebuild its offensive line this year. It is just, but it's also kind of interesting though, because like they're doing it with a new offensive line coach, doing it under this new staff. But you then look at the guys who we think are going to be the starting offensive line, and I think you and I are going to have the same 5 guys as our starting offensive linemen here. 3 of them are guys who were on Penn State staff roster last year, and this entire room is filled with dudes who were Penn Staters under James Franklin and Phil Troutwine, and are now going to be on the offensive line under Matt Campbell and Ryan Clan.
Yeah, it's weird, Bill. I think we'll rattle it off after I make this point, Bill, but I think I at least only have one Iowa State transfer penned in as a starter for me along the offensive line for Penn State.
Yes.
I'll rattle it off, Bill. I'm sure you're the same way. I'll go left to right. Left tackle, I talked about this with a podcast I was on last night. Speaking of, I was on a podcast yesterday called Inside the Pylon. Go check it out in your podcast.
We probably should have plugged that instead of talking about burgers for 6 minutes. But whatever, continue.
And we talked about how we want to term guys like Malachi Goodman now that it's 5 for 5. Is he still a redshirt freshman, or does he just become like a regular sophomore now if everybody has 5 years? But regardless, Malachi Goodman, the guy who was on the roster last year, did not take a snap, former 5-star in at left tackle. I have Trevor Burr in there at left guard. I have Brock Riker, the Texas State transfer, at center. I got Cooper Cousins. Feels like he's been with the program forever. Somehow he's only a junior. And with the new 5 for 5 thing, he could be around for his Penn State career is not even halfway over potentially, which is very funny to me. And then I got Anthony Jocko sliding back out to his, I think, best position at right tackle. Bill, are you in the same camp as me? I think the only difference potentially would be left guard, but I think you're aligned with me for Burr.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
Which makes sense. I mean, Burr did start, I want to say it was 6 games last year for Iowa State. So yeah, it's a major revamp, but you got guys who started in some form or fashion at 4 of the 5 spots. And the only spot you don't is maybe the most important guy of the bunch in Goodman. It is going to be interesting. They got a good mix of guys they were able to retain. Owen Alicini sounds like he's going to be trending towards the swing guy. Dom Ruley, missed a lot of spring ball, but you put him in there at center, he can get some nice reps. And there's great options, behind them that are both Penn State guys who stuck around, Iowa State guys who came in. It's a pretty strong unit, even if there are a lot of question marks. Bill, I called it out in maybe I didn't call it out in the podcast. It may have just been with you and a couple of buddies that in my copy of the Phil Steele magazine this year, I know all those quotes come from guys on the staff directly, but Matt Campbell did tell Phil Steele he thinks Riker can be the best center in the FBS. And that feels like really high praise that Campbell, like himself, put his name on for a guy who's never started outside of the Sun Belt. So that's a lot to say. It's a lot of unknown, but there is breadcrumbs here that this offensive line could maybe even take a step forward despite losing a first round talent in Vega Ioane.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the thing that makes me so interested in this group is the pure talent that they have here. Like the three holdovers from Penn State's I mean, just among the starter. And even if you want to go a little bit deeper, Malachi Goodwin was a 5-star. Cooper Cousins is a top 100 kid. Anthony Donko, a guy who has played a ton of football and has showed to have a remarkably high ceiling. I believe both Garen Sexton and Owen Alasini were both 4 stars. Sexton, I believe, definitely was. Alasini might have been. Guys like Donnie Harbor, guys like Chimdi Ono, they were all guys who were blue chip recruits who stuck around to play on Penn State's offensive line. There's a lot of talent here. And really only one of those guys has shown that they can consistently do it at this level. That is Anthony Donko, who, as you mentioned, Matt, played a lot of right guard last year. And even when he was playing right guard, it was basically said, like, this is a marriage of convenience thing. This is a way to get our 5 best offensive linemen on the field. Everyone agrees that his best position is right tackle. But though in those guys who stayed, they're guys who have a really, like, I am confident that Phil Troutwine put a really good foundation down for this group. The last strength and conditioning staff made sure to get them to a place where they are physically able to potentially play college football. And now the baton has been handed off to Ryan Clanton, to the current strength staff, to Matt Campbell, and just how he views football and the importance that he puts on play in the trenches. And you're combining that with a couple of guys who transferred in from Iowa State. You mentioned Burr, Vea Ikakula, 2 guys who are going to be coming over. Will Tompkins, another guy coming over. And Burr's a guy, like you mentioned, played a good amount of football for them. And I think it probably speaks to him and how highly they think of him, that they said, you're coming and you're going to be you're going to be a guy who starts along our offensive line, presumably starts along our offensive line. And then Brock Riker, who, as you flagged, is a guy that Campbell holds an incredibly high regard. The Penn State, I believe Alabama was one of the schools that was in for him. A lot of schools were trying to get him to transfer up from Texas State. And
I think he's the most intriguing transfer who's not Rocco
very
Betts.
possible. Very possible.
Even more so than like the Soa or Eskildsen. Because I feel like it's very rare to find an offensive lineman whose game can transfer like almost immediately up that high of a level, going from a G5 school in the Sun Belt to Penn State. I think he's the one, maybe not what did I say, most interesting? Yeah, I think I'd probably plant my flag. Maybe not won't be the best, but I think that is one of the more interesting transfers that Campbell brought in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And in that group, it's a good bit of projection. You're projecting how Malachi Goodman is going to do as a guy who is playing left tackle in college football for the first time. You're projecting how Trevor Burr is going to transfer up from Trevor Burr and Brock Riker, how they're going to deal with transferring up. Like if Riker ends up being kind of like a Hunter Norzad situation where that first year is just a bit of a shock for him, even as he has his ups and downs and then plays a little bit there, that wouldn't shock me. Cooper Cousins, like last year was supposed to be the year he took the baton and ran with it, and he just didn't do that. And now he is going to have to prove that he can do that over the, when there's no backup plan. I mean, there is a backup plan. There are guys who've been with the staff, but there's no one who is viewed as the no doubt guy who could step in and replace Cooper Cousins like there was last year with Anthony Donko and,
TJ Shanahan. There's no Shanahan. Yeah.
Right. So, and then Donko's the guy who you just feel pretty good about him. But I think the mix of how talented this group of football players are, whether they are the guys who are starting, whether they are the guys who are kind of making up the depth pieces, mixed with, Ryan Clanton he looks like he was put on earth to be an offensive line coach.
Oh yeah.
He says stuff like, you've got to be violent. You've got to want to run through someone's face. Like he is just aesthetically what I want my offensive line coach to be. And then you hear him actually talk about offensive line play, and it's like, oh wow, that's, he's a guy who's really thoughtful and really sharp and clearly has a good grasp on what he's doing. I think there's reason to be very optimistic about what this group can potentially accomplish. And it's a group that I think is going to be really interesting to watch, particularly in the non-conference, because I want to see how they get basically everybody but Donko up to speed among the starters. And then where does Dom Rulli fit in? Where do Garrett Sexton and Owen Alasini and Will Tompkins and Kua Cole and Vea Aikakula and Donnie Harbor and Shimdiono and, whoever else they might have brought in, where do all of these guys fit into this entire picture along the offensive line? And it's the balance of like a very new group and a bunch of guys who you're someone accidentally rolling up on someone's knee away from needing to rely on a lot. So I'm very interested. Like, I'm excited to see what this group could do, which is weird because there really is a lot of uncertainty around the guys at this level.
Which is totally fine and very normal I feel like this, Bill, might be the easiest one for us to talk about because like you mentioned at the start of this podcast, Bill, we knew this was coming down like the road here. Like we knew this was going to be a major transition season for the Penn State offensive line. And yeah, does it look a little bit different? But like at the end of the day, when you're replacing 4 starters and you can trot out your next offensive line being 3 guys who've been in the program a long time and 2 transfers, that feels fairly normal for modern college football. Like take the coaching change out of it. This feels like an offensive line that Penn State could have landed and could have built, maybe with the exception of Burr, but they probably could have found a comparable player in the portal somewhere. Or maybe Shanahan sticks around. All this to say, Bill, it's a unit that, yes, you're right. They need to gel extremely quickly. And similar to what Penn State did with Olu Fashanu, what was that, Bill, in 2023, where Olu really didn't practice all that much. He wasn't on the field a ton in blowouts or in the non-conference. You can do that with Anthony Donko, and it gives you a shot here to get everybody else on the field for a lot of different reps and get everybody comfortable with each other. It is extremely rare for an entire offensive line to go the full season playing together. They're going to need the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th guy to be ready to go and be ready to play. But that's a problem that they can sort out fairly quickly. And the bigger problem that I see in the rearview mirror or coming up ahead here is going to be primarily, what does Malachi Goodman give you? Because if he can be like Olu was, where yes, you take a little bit of a beating to start, but then once you figure it out, your insane athleticism just allows you to be a fairly dominant offensive tackle from the jump. I think we're really cooking with gas here. And for an offense that Taylor Mauser has made it very clear he wants to run the ball with both his running backs and his quarterbacks, if they can get behind a big athletic offensive line, it's going to make things easy fairly quickly for this bunch. And I think that's going to be something that's probably underappreciated here is how different Rocco Becht can look behind a maybe even significantly more talented offensive line. And I have a feeling that it's going to lead to some nice production numbers and maybe a little bit of stat padding early on, which is a fine thing to do after we watch them kind of stumble around for most of the non-conference last year. So a lot to like here, Bill. But yeah, you're right. This is all projection in every sense of the word, with the exception of Donko. But if this clicks, Bill, I think this can be one of the better offensive lines in the Big Ten. And that's saying a lot because Michigan always had his good offensive line. I think Ohio State's bringing back like 90-something odd starts. Indiana has a good offensive line. Oregon does. If it clicks, I think this Penn State offensive line can be up there with those teams. If it doesn't, we might be in some trouble.
Yeah, let's go right into the starters. And we've kind of already talked about this group of 5 guys, or who you and I think will be the 5 guys, which is Malachi Goodman and Anthony Donko with the tackles. And it's worth mentioning, Donko did have to get some sort of offseason procedure done. Miss spring ball, we'll see what he looks like when he's back. Trevor Burr and Cooper Cousins as your guards, and Brock Reich potentially as your center. Really fun thing here, Matt, is they could potentially run this group out there this year and next year. I would be really surprised if they do, because I think if Anthony Donko is coming back to Penn State next year, I'd go, something must have gone wrong here. I don't know.
That's a great point.
But we'll see. I mean, maybe he just really likes being a college football player, which I would really like being a college football player. It seems like it's probably pretty fun.
I mean, I'm sure he could get an NIL bag, but I mean, listen, it's
Yeah.
nothing like whatever the NFL money is going to give him. But I never thought
Yes.
about that though. You're right. This for how senior laden last year was. There's no technical seniors on this starting offensive line, or maybe even in the room as a whole. I could be wrong.
Dom Ruley is a redshirt.
Dom Ruley,
senior.
you're right. You're right.
Walk on Jim Fitzgerald is a redshirt
Mm-hmm.
senior, but otherwise, yeah, everybody else will have eligibility after this season. I really love the tackles in particular, the interior guys in the offensive line. Trevor Burr, they clearly have a ton of trust in him. He started 21 games under this staff at Iowa State. Cousins, he still has to put a full season together. I'm kind of wondering if he's the Mike Gesicki of this team, in that we always talk about 2015 Mike Gesicki versus 2016 Mike Gesicki, and how like the vibes seemed like they were getting cleaned up was really big for him breaking out. And what we know about Cooper Cousins is he's a big and gregarious guy who really loves Penn State, who wants to be really good. And last year was just such a pressure cooker that I do wonder if just like a vibe calibration is going to be really important for him.
Yep.
We'll see what ends up happening. And then Riker, you kind of flagged, and I will get out of your way in a second, let you talk about him a little bit more if you'd like, because I know that's your dude. But for me, the tackles are what make this room so interesting. Like you mentioned it with Malachi Goodman, where he is already 6'6" and 330 pounds. He looks the part and has like a natural ability about him that this staff has not had before. And Penn State hasn't really had in a minute. For all the good offensive linemen that Penn State has had, even including guys like Olu at left tackle, they haven't had a 5-star blue chip guy along their offensive line.
I think there's been two. I think Franklin landed 2 5-star offensive linemen. Yeah, I think it was 2. I think it was him and Javen plays who he plays for. I won't give out that game away later. But like,
oh boy,
they don't get these guys very often. And for one of them to be ready to go in year 2 is crazy impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And big, long arms. They seem like they really love what they have with him, just by some of the comments that have come out about him. Trying to see if I could find. Trying to see if I can't really find anything, but just some of the quotes that have come out about Malachi Goodman in particular, and how he's impressed, and how it seems like he's really taken to this staff and being able to make the most of his opportunities. Really, really encouraging. And then Donko getting back to his usual position is something that I almost feel like has gone under the radar. He was unbelievable for Penn State during the 2024 season. 2025, he was still quite good, even not playing his real natural position. And just
also coming off an injury. Like, remember, he got hurt in the Minnesota game back in 2024. Yeah.
And his just general way where he could be a tone setter. He's a guy who could bring that physicality and that nastiness they really appreciate. I think is going to be really important. And it's going, it gives them a guy to run behind. Just something as simple as that, I think, is going to be really important as they build out this offensive line. This also gives me a chance to read my favorite quote that anybody has given this offseason, which was when Ryan Clanton was giving pointers to someone else along the offensive line, and then Donko ends up walking in. I get back to coaching and I look back and I see him. He took off his shirt, his sweatshirt, his pants, his shoes, and his socks. He only had underwear on doing the drills, and it was the most impressive thing I've seen in a long time. The guy loves football, but you could really see his body, the way his body is built. Everything about his body is a tackle body, which is a very funny quote for many reasons, particularly coming off of his role last year. But I think it kind of speaks to, like, this is just a level of talent that a guy like Ryan Clanton just hasn't dealt with before. And you can just tell how fired up he is to be able to work with pieces that are potentially this good.
Yeah, and that's a major testament to Phil Troutwine and company for identifying these kind of guys and getting them on campus and developing them the right way. And I am excited to see what step they can take next. Bill, you just kind of really hyped up our tackles here, Bill. Do you mind if I take a little bit of time to talk about Mr. Brock Riker, if you don't
Go
mind?
ahead.
All right, Bill. The number, I cannot believe this. I maybe, Bill, I could be wrong, but I think the lowest like ranked guy of the Franklin era recruiting wise might have been Rob Windsor. Like might have been. Bill, Brock Riker back in 2020, was it 2024? Was the 2004th ranked player. He was the number 162 interior offensive lineman and the number 289th ranked player in the state of Texas. I just talked about, if you listen to the Receivers podcast, if you haven't, go back and listen. But I kind of give this Matt Campbell staff a lot of praise for being extremely good at finding diamonds in the rough, whether that be in the high school recruiting rankings or bringing guys in via the transfer portal. This feels like that. But Riker, not only is it a lot of projection, he was second team freshman All-American back in 2025, started all 12 games at center, and was an all Sun Belt selection at Texas State after he saw a redshirt season in 2024. So this is a guy who came in wildly underappreciated for one reason or another in a football obsessed state in Texas. Didn't start right away, developed his body a little bit, but once he got on the field, he kind of dominated from the start. Bill, he had 438 pass blocking snaps last year. Do you want to guess how many sacks he gave up in that he's credited for?
2.
0. He did not allow a single, which is a great place to exist. Like if you can avoid having pressure come up the middle here, and I think it's kind of a really good segue that we talked about tackles first, Bill. If there is a weakness on this offensive line, it's going to be at guard. Like, I feel like that's probably fair to say between the unknownness of Cooper Cousins, excuse me, and Burr only starting 6 games last year and I think 8 games the year before that. So if they have an absolute mauler in the middle calling the plays, I know he has to get up to speed on the playbook, but most of the guys on the offensive line do as well. I think that sets up very nicely for Rocco Beck to have a clean pocket, and also for Hanson, Peoples, and Quentin Martin to find running lanes and get to the second level, hopefully make a couple guys miss and rip off some big runs. Like, this was a fantastic find. I am extremely bummed that Dom Rulli missed out on what I would think would have been a really fun competition in the spring. But I think Riker can really raise the bar and maybe raise the overall standard for Penn State centers, because Penn State centers have been fine for a very long time. Like Dawkins was more than serviceable, but for a long time, Penn State centers were, hey, you're the most experienced interior offensive lineman, and now you're going to play here. Like Michael Mennett was that. Juice Scruggs was that. To have like a pure center from the jump is something I don't feel like we've seen maybe since Dawkins. And I know Dawkins was just the guy last year, but it's a little bit different by nature of how much esteem Riker's coming in with. So interesting guy in the middle. And like I mentioned, maybe one of the transfers I'm most intrigued by that the staff brought in.
And, just something that you mentioned a minute ago, Matt, he's a redshirt sophomore. So he potentially he's already played a decent bit of football. I mean, what was the number you said? What did the number you threw out there about number of stats?
I think it was 289 pass blocking snaps, but let me get that page up and reconfirm. 438, excuse me, 438.
Yeah, and 17 starts in his career, 12 starts last season. He's a guy who has played a decent amount of football already and still could potentially play a decent amount more. And it's worth mentioning, like, Dom Rulli is a guy who's been around forever, who knows Penn State, who loves Penn State, who played really well in the one game that he played.
He really did
for Penn State. So the fact that he might not get the job because of a transfer that came in speaks very, very highly to what that transfer is able to do. Mm-hmm. And knocking Rulli down a roll, down a step, like, this is a pretty deep offensive line room. It's an offensive line room that has a lot of bodies. It's a lot of guys who aren't aren't exactly super tested in the college football world. I can't remember who among the Penn State holdovers have got their 4 games here or there. Ikakula from Iowa State ended up getting 4 games in 2025. But
very few of the guys who stuck around for Penn State
yeah,
have played. Like I want to say
yeah,
Chimdi Ono was on oh my god, kick protection, like
yeah.
PAT protection,
I was
and
going to say there
famously
was some
got
special
benched
teams in
for
there.
blocking down at one point. And
Yeah.
outside of that, like Owen Alasini got in skinny as hell, like not ready to go yet. Sexton maybe a little bit here and there, but it's guys that we always thought projected to be
Yeah.
contributors down the line. And now it's year 3 for year 4 for a lot of those guys. Like now it's the time to start getting on the field a little bit, dipping your toe in the water and seeing what you can do in a backup role.
Yeah, I think Sexton played a lot of special teams, but I can't recall off the top of my head.
Mhm.
But that's a good point, Matt. Like right now in college football, we're at a point where if you are good enough to play along the offensive line, you don't really need to sit. There's always going to be someone out there saying, "Hey, we want you to come and actually play for us," as opposed to being a depth guy elsewhere. And I don't know what that means for the depth on this Penn State offensive line. They have a total of let's see, 3 guys. Vea Ikakula, and Will Tompkins, who uh, followed from Iowa State. They have
On top of Burr. So 4 total, 3
on top,
backups.
yeah. I meant to bend backups, but yes.
Yep.
Another guy, Tyshawn Huff, came from Tiffin College. They have a bunch of guys who are holdovers from the last Penn State staff: Dom Ruley, Garrett Sexton, Owen Alasini, Donnie Harbor, Chimbiono. I don't know what or if anything to expect from them. Like, as we're having this conversation on July 8th of 2026, I don't know if it's like responsible to put any sort of expectation on these guys, because we just, other than Ruley, who got run in the bowl game, we just don't really know what Penn State has in any of them. So I think it's just a matter of you get them as much time as you can in the non-con. You get them in during blowouts and stuff. Maybe you rotate in situations, a series replacing Sexton gets a series replacing Donko here. Harbor gets a series replacing someone there, like that sort of thing. But I just don't know if there's anything that we can reasonably expect out of the offensive line in backups, because we just don't know what they are right now.
I think if there's one guy, Bill, we can kind of plant our flag on is going to play at least in some form or fashion. I mean, Ruley would be probably number 1, but then I think Owen Alasini might be the next most likely guy simply because of the swing potential of it. Like I know I've read over the years, or over the year he's been here, year and change, he's gotten snaps, I want to say, excuse me, at all 5 positions. So that's a guy who can come in. You can shuffle the deck after that. If you got to move Donko back to guard, you got to move him back to guard. Ideally, I know it's not ideal, but you have a guy in Alasini, big, athletic. There was a mic'd up moment, Bill, I want to say from the 2025, it would have had to have been the 2025 blue-white game, where Aller specifically calls out Alasini as like a guy. It's like, oh, Owen's going to be good. So for him to be able to have this kind of role in year 2, not nearly as big of a role as a guy like Malachi Goodman, but still for a guy who is like 6'7" and got into college skinny, like he's 6'7", 303. Bill, that's still pretty skinny for a guy of that size. So I do think that Alasini is at least maybe the most intriguing guy of this bunch. And part of that might be just because he's the youngest of the bunch with probably the clearest path to see the field. Like, not saying that Chimbiono in year 4 can't figure it out at this point, but part of me thinks it's like, hey, maybe he's just a nice depth piece and a special teams guy for you, which is fine. You need those kind of guys. But I think Ruley and Alasini make up the 6th and 7th pieces of this line. And if Penn State were to go jumbo, I think they've got some decent options for what that has to look like.
So we're ending these episodes by playing a game, which we will get to in a moment, and I'm going to do very bad at, but then ranking every unit that we talk about among the rest of Penn State's offensive units. I had tight end at number 1, quarterback at number 3, running back at number 4, wide receiver at number 5. Matt had tight end at number 1, running back at number 3, wide receiver number 4, quarterback number 5. Using the powers of deduction, Matt, it appears both of us have the offensive line as the second best unit that Penn State has. What do you accredit that to?
It's crazy, Bill, considering where this program was. I guess it's been 10 years at this point since Penn State had those really atrocious offensive lines. But I do want to make sure I always appreciate it that like this is legitimately viewed as a strength finally after all those years of it being pretty awful. I attribute this, Bill, I think mainly to Anthony Donko and Brock Riker. I think having those guys with incredibly high ceilings is the cornerstone of this. And then 3 other guys in that starting unit who I think have incredibly high ceilings as well. They just got to put it all together. But if you have a guy like, if Malachi Goodman can play like a 5-star, and once you're on campus, stars don't matter anymore. But if those physical traits he has turns into legitimate production, that guy can be a first-round pick one day. Just at that size, at that length, to be that good, to get on the field in that kind of role as young as he is incredibly impressive to me. And I think Cooper Cousins is like likely a captain for this team. And a guy who I really wanted to click for. And just I feel like I know a little bit more. And I feel like what they're good at is going to translate under the new staff, as opposed to, some of my concerns surrounding how the running backs and receivers might translate. So I have this as the number 2 unit on the Penn State offense for 2026.
Yeah, I also have it number 2. I think it is. I think it's like the tight end room in that it has just such a high ceiling, and I am knocking it just because I think the floor is slightly lower than the tight end room, because it just takes a little bit more projecting. But it's not like you have to squint to see a really good unit here. Like you could very easily see this being the best unit on Penn State's offensive side of the football by the end of the year, between the talent that they have, between how good of an offensive line coach seems like Ryan Clanton is, how much priority Matt Campbell places on elite offensive line play.
Yeah, shit, we got this far. We didn't even mention Matt Campbell's started his career as an offensive line coach. Like this, of course, this is going to be good under him.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot that goes into it. There are a lot of reasons to be optimistic about this group. I think bare minimum, they're going to be a really rock solid group for Penn State. And if all goes right, this is going to be the room that Penn State's offense is built around, Matt, because they have a lot of good players. In fact, they have so many good players that there are a lot of players that are no longer on the team.
That is correct, Bill. Bill, there are 7, by my count, former Penn State offensive linemen who are out there playing college football elsewhere in 2026. It is time for Who He Play For. If it is your first time, inspired by Inside the NBA's outstanding game of the same name. And when I say inspired by, I mean directly stolen of. I will give Bill the name of a player. Bill has to tell me who he played for. Again, Bill, there are 7 former Penn State offensive linemen who are playing college football elsewhere. We will start out, Bill, with one. Do you want one, Bill, to start out with that I think you'll get, or that I think there's no shot of you getting in a million years?
It's your party, Matthew.
All right, we'll start you off easy, Bill. A North Carolina native, a guy who I was extremely high on, and I drafted, Bill, in our retention draft. Bill, Egan Boyer, who he played for.
So you said easy. My guess is that means he followed either Franklin or Troutwine. I will guess he followed Troutwine to Florida.
Bill, that is correct. Egan Boyer now plays for the Florida Gators.
That
Bill,
is
start
one
out
more,
1-0.
That is one more than I thought I was going to get.
I am extremely impressed with that one, but I did think you'd get that one. I think we'll get this one as well, Bill. On his 3rd school now. Came in for Penn State last year from Texas A&M. Had a little bit of a role, maybe didn't go the way he was hoping for. Bill, TJ Shanahan, who he played for.
TJ Shanahan. Did he also go to Florida?
Bill, he also went to Florida. Well done. You are 2 for 2 on what I perceive on the gimmies on this list. Bill, this is where it gets incredibly difficult and incredibly fun from my point of view. Bill, let's run it back. Although the new rules are in effect, some people are grandfathered in, and there are 2 members of Penn State's 2020 recruiting class who are still playing college football. We'll talk about one next week. But Bill, Ibrahim Traore, who he played for. Never, I don't think ever saw game action at Penn State, but was on scholarship while he was here. And is an alum, I believe. So good for Ibrahim.
I will throw a dart and say Southern Miss.
That's a great guess, Bill. I like where your head's at. Caden Saunders plays at Southern Miss, but Ibrahim Traore plays at the University of Toledo. So
sure.
In your
what made that a great guess then if he's at Toledo?
Hey, I mean, you got it. You picked a school where some other Penn State guys at, and broadly the same, and broadly the same colors. Like there's yellow in the Toledo and the Southern Miss logo.
Absolutely.
All right, Bill. With all of the realignment chaos, I have no idea if this is even in the same conference as Southern Miss. But Bill, we mentioned him earlier. One of two former five-star offensive linemen that James Franklin was able to land in his tenure. A Pennsylvania native, Bill Javen Williams, who he played for.
Did he go to East Carolina?
He did not. A lot of guys did. He is in a Carolina. I will give you another guess of another Carolina school. It is probably the FBS school, Bill, you think about the least.
Oh, God. The FBS school, I think. NC State.
That it is not NC State, Bill. It is Charlotte, one that I'm sure you think about even less than NC State.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you, Matt. They're about on equal footing.
Yeah, tough but fair. All right, Bill. Let's where do we want to keep this one here? We got 3 more to go. Another formerly extremely highly touted recruit, a great wrestler in his time, never fully came together for Alex Birchmeier at Penn State. Bill, Alex Birchmeier, who he play for?
I remember him being from Virginia. I don't remember him following James Franklin, so I will guess UVA.
It is not UVA, Bill, but you are in the right state, Bill. He attends Liberty University now. Okay. And I will hold all my jokes about Liberty for now. All right, Bill. The only true freshman offensive lineman, excuse me, by my count, to transfer out from last year, Michael Troutman. I want to say a New Jersey native. No, Bill, Michael Troutman, who he played for. That's not true. The only freshman thing, because the next guy's a freshman too last year. But whatever. Michael Troutman, Bill, who he played for.
Michael Troutman. Duke. I don't know.
Not Duke. Always a safe guess just to stick with James Franklin for some of these younger guys. Bill, Michael Troutman is at Virginia Tech alongside Franklin, Ty Howell, and co. And best of luck to that young man. All right, Bill. Last one. It's a little bit cheating, but there's a fun little Penn State connection with this guy's new school.
I don't like that you're saying the word cheating here, but okay.
It's an FCS school, so he did not transfer to an FBS program. But Bill, Brady O'Hara out of Pittsburgh. Bill, Brady O'Hara, who he played for. There is an extremely loose Penn State football connection to this school. Extremely
Is it
loose.
That? All right, I think that might be a hint. Is it that like Grove City College place?
It's not Grove City, Bill. It's loose. Some would even say it's lax.
Lackawanna.
No, not Lackawanna. Bill, that's a great hint when you hear what this school is.
Okay. Might
Think
be
about
lax.
Penn State and lax. What is lax
Monmouth.
short for, Bill? There we go,
Monmouth,
Bill. He
yeah.
is. So for those who missed it, the Chris Hogan, Penn State lacrosse, who went on to play a 5th year at Monmouth football. Bill, Brady O'Hara is now at Monmouth, which I believe is in, Bill, do you acknowledge Central New Jersey's existence?
Shut up.
All right, fair enough. Bill, that's all I got. Well done. I'm overall, I'm pretty impressed with how you were able to do on this one. You were very, very close with Birchmeier, and you nailed Shanahan and Boyer. Everybody else was extremely tough. Bill, the defensive line next week is truly hell. Like there is, I want to say there's double the amount of guys. No, Bill, there's like double the amount of guys for defensive line next week. Like we might have to fly through defensive line preview to keep that podcast under an hour because we have a lot of defensive linemen who will play elsewhere now.
Don't like this. Okay. We will get to that next week. For now, I think we'll go off into this week. We'll all have a lovely week, and we hope you have a lovely week. Matt, do you have any final things to add before I send the people off into that lovely week?
What do I got? Not really a whole lot of anything. I hope everybody had a very safe and enjoyable 4th of July weekend. I didn't do much of anything, honestly. Hung out at home. I watched a lot of the World Cup, and it is very funny to me to have hope for the U.S. and then immediately realize, there are a different class of teams out there, and the U.S. ran into one. So World Cup's been fun, though. I'm not a big soccer guy, but I got really into
Long
it.
story. Yeah, I mean, the World Cup is my favorite thing in the world. So it's been a blast getting to have a World Cup summer. I hope everybody here enjoys the remainder of their World Cup summer and the remainder of their week. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. Make sure you subscribe wherever you go and get your podcast, and make sure you leave us a 5-star review on whatever your podcasting platform of choice is. Also, make sure you go onto YouTube, subscribe to us there, hop into the comments, chat with other people who watch these YouTube videos of our podcast. Make sure you are following us on Twitter and Blue Sky. And we just hope you have a great rest of your week. One last time, thank you, everyone, for listening to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. For my co-host, Matt Filipovitz, I'm Bill DeFilippo. Take care, everyone.
Bill, if we were going to do who he coached for, I'm very sad to report that my boy Matt Limegrover is enjoying a nice retirement from college football coaching.
Yeah.
Shout out, as always, to friend of the show, Matt Limegrover.